Some evening not long ago, last week, maybe last month, maybe so ordinary you've long since let it go. Something happened too fast to follow. It might have been a car drifting toward your lane, a glass slipping off the counter, a shape at the dark end of the garden your eyes hadn't finished reading. And before you understood any of it, before the words that's a car could even form, the thing was already handled. Your foot had found the brake. Your hand had closed around the glass, and you were left holding it, faintly amazed, with no memory of reaching for it. Then, half a second later, the rest of you caught up. The understanding, the jolt of, the heart arriving late to its own emergency. Underneath the ordinary relief, there was maybe something quieter you didn't stop to name. The most important second of the whole event had happened without you. Something had seen the danger and moved your body to meet it, and only afterward let you know there had been anything to fear. All of it was the work of something about 3 pounds, folded into total darkness inside your skull. It has never seen light. It never will. And still, every second of your life, it builds light and sound and the weight of the glass in your hand and the you who stands there being relieved. That soft, blind thing kept you safe tonight. You weren't there for the part that mattered. That gap, the one between your body acting and you finding out, isn't a trick of memory and it isn't rare. It has been timed. The thing that moved first moved in thousandths of a second, in a flicker of time gone before a single thought could begin to assemble. By the time the thought arrived, the work was finished. This isn't reserved for emergencies. It runs right now, far beneath the floor of anything you'd notice in this room tonight, while you lie here doing nothing at all. Lie still, and you can almost feel the edge of it. Something in you is reading the dark, the shape the furniture makes, the small sounds of the building settling. It's measuring all of it against a very old idea of what danger looks like, and deciding, tonight, that there's nothing here worth waking you for. You aren't doing this. You aren't even aware of it. The whole thing runs on its own, on a private channel, on a shortcut so fast and so old that thinking never gets a vote. And it is old. The same quiet machinery that put your foot on the brake has been running for hundreds of millions of years, in almost exactly this form. It ran through your parents and theirs, back past the point where there were any people to inherit it. In the plainest sense, it's why you're here at all, which leaves one strange thing lying underneath the whole arrangement. If something in you sees the danger first, and decides first, and acts first, and only then lets you in, then in the most important moments of your life, who is actually in charge? The one who moved, or the one who found out, a heartbeat later? And are those two different people, or one person, meeting itself a moment too late to take the credit? The thing that keeps you alive arrives before you do. It always has. Before we go any further, one quick thing. If a channel like this, slow, quiet, made for the edge of sleep, feels worth keeping alive, the subscribe button does more for it than almost anything else. And there's a question worth answering in the comments if you're so moved. Has your body ever handled a danger before you understood it, caught the glass, hit the brake, stepped back from nothing in the dark, and left you to feel the fear only afterward, once it was already over? Every answer to that gets read. Every single one. For now though, there's nothing in this room that needs you. Let your jaw come unclenched. It usually is, a little, without your say-so. Let your shoulders drop off the back of your neck. Your breathing will lengthen on its own over the next few minutes, and you don't have to help it. The thing that moves first is still down there, still keeping its watch while you let go. And the place to begin is the smallest moment it owns, the single instant when your body already knows you're in danger and the rest of you still has no idea. Here is one you've almost certainly lived. You're walking, outdoors, somewhere a little wild, the light going gold, and the ground a few steps ahead of you is suddenly not safe. There's a coil of something in the grass, and you're already moving back before you could put a name to it, your weight dropping onto your back foot, a cold bolt shooting up behind your knees, your breath snagging high in your chest. Then, half a second late, the world resolves, and the coil becomes a length of garden hose, lying just where it's lain all afternoon, frightening no one but you. The order matters because it runs backwards from the way it feels. It feels as if you saw the snake, the fear came, and so you jumped. But there was no snake. You jumped, your body flooded, and only afterward did clear sight catch up and quietly correct the record. Not a snake, a hose, lying where it had lain all along. You can feel that correction arrive, if you watch for it. The dread drains out the instant the word hose lands, the slow and careful part of the brain reaching the scene late and overruling the fast part's verdict. Relief, it turns out, is the feeling of the correction coming through. None of this is a malfunction, and none of it is rare. It has been turned over in laboratories for the better part of a century. The neuroscientist who has spent the longest looking into this exact gap, a man named Joseph Ledoux, keeps returning to some version of the snake and the stick. He does it because the example lays bare something most of us go a whole life without noticing. The machinery that keeps you alive does its most important work before you are let in on it. Put a number on that word first, and it gets stranger still. Take the cleanest version of the experiment. Not a snake this time, but a sudden, unexpected sound. A door slamming, a balloon burst a foot from your face. The jump that follows has a name, the startle reflex, and it is the oldest and crudest of the body's defenses, wired low through the brainstem, beneath and before the parts of you that think. You had it as a newborn before you owned a single word or a self to attach the fear to. Every mammal alive runs some version of the same circuit. The first muscles to move are the ones around your eyes, and they fire roughly 30 to 40 thousandths of a second after the bang. That is faster than you could blink on purpose. From there, the reaction pours down through the body in a wave you could nearly time by hand. The neck, the shoulders, the arms, the legs, the whole frame braced inside a tenth of a second. And the knowing, the part that can look and name the thing and let the all clear settle through your chest, arrives much later by something closer to a quarter or a third of a second. In all honesty, even that figure is argued over, because the moment a fact tips across into conscious awareness is one of the slipperiest things in the whole of neuroscience to pin down. But the gap itself is not in question. Whatever the exact numbers, your body moves 5, 8, 10 times faster than your awareness of it, meeting the emergency and settling it long before the news reaches the part of you that calls itself you. And here is the detail that decides the question of whose body this actually is. You cannot talk the startle out of happening. Warn a person that the bang is coming, count them down to the second, and they flinch anyway. Smaller, braced, but flinching all the same. Sit them in front of the loud noise knowing exactly when it will fire, and the muscles around the eyes still snap shut on their own schedule, taking their orders from somewhere the conscious mind was never handed a key to. The reflex does not consult you. It was never designed to. Run that forward, and it tips into something genuinely strange. By the time you know you were afraid, the fear has already done its work and moved on. The jump is over. Had the coil in the grass been a real snake, the stepping back would have carried you clear before you grasped there was anything to be clear of. And the hammering heart, the shallow breath, the cold pouring down your legs, none of it saved you. It is the aftermath. It is your body, having already acted, getting around at last to telling you what it did and roughly why. You don't feel the fear and then move. You move, and the fear is part of how you learn that you did. Evolution built it this way on purpose, and for a reason that is hard to argue with. A system that waited until you were sure would be a system that buried you, because certainty is slow and snakes are not. The world that shaped this wiring was thick with coils in the grass, shapes in the branches, quick movement at the edge of sight. In that world, the price of flinching at 100 harmless sticks was almost nothing, a wasted heartbeat, a flush of embarrassment. The price of missing the one real snake was the end of the line. So the body learned to gamble, to move at the first hint and check the receipt later, to treat every snake-shaped thing as a snake until the slow, careful, costly machinery upstairs can afford to say otherwise. You are descended, every one of you, from the ones who jumped, and it is doing this now. While you lie here, that fast and ancient part of you is awake and at work, sampling the room, the small sounds, the shape of the dark, running each one against its old catalogue of dangerous shapes and finding, so far, nothing that fits. You are not aware of the search. You never are. But it's the reason you can afford to let your guard down at all, because something underneath you won't. As you sink, it stays at its post. The thresholds ease a little, the way they do every night, so the ordinary creaks and settlings of the building stop reaching all the way in. The watch doesn't end though. It only narrows, down to the few shapes old enough and sharp enough to still be worth waking you for, and tonight, almost certainly, not one of them is here. So you can let the rest go. The part of you that jumps first is still on, still gambling, still keeping the door. And for once, it asks nothing of you in return. The flinch in the grass is a small, visible thing, a jump, a caught breath, a coil that turns out to be a hose. But it sits on top of something far larger, and the question hiding underneath it is the one worth following down into the dark. A body like yours is, in almost everything it does, slow. Signals crawl along the nerves at walking pace. A thought takes its unhurried third of a second to arrive. So how does anything in here outrun the thought of itself? What kind of wiring could carry a single verdict, danger, move, all the way to your legs before the rest of you has even been told a question was asked? Below the thinking, deciding, knowing part of you, there is a faster way through, and almost nothing else in the brain is permitted to take it. The shortcut begins, the way most things in here do, at a junction. A sound arrives, a snapped twig, a footstep where no footstep should be, and before it can become anything like hearing, it lands at a small relay station near the center of the head, a switchboard called the thalamus that nearly every signal from the senses has to pass through. There, at the switchboard, the signal does something quietly remarkable. It splits in two. One copy sets off on the long climb up into the cortex, the deeply folded outer shell where the world gets recognized, sorted, and understood. The other drops onto a road almost nothing else in the brain is allowed to use, short, steep, plunging straight down toward the body's alarm, skipping the cortex entirely, carrying not a picture, but a rumor. That alarm has a name. It's a small knot of tissue, buried deep on each side of the head, called the amygdala. And for now, the only thing worth knowing about it is that both roads are racing to reach it. The two roads carry very different cargo. Up the long way, through the cortex, the signal is built for accuracy. It moves through layer after layer of processing, the blur resolving into something exact. Not just a shape in the grass, but a particular shape, a hose, a coiled rope, a sleeping cat handed over in full detail with a verdict you can trust. Down the short way, there's no time for any of that, and no stops to do it in. What the low road carries is fast and crude, a low-resolution smear, the visual equivalent of something caught at the very edge of your sight, enough to register snake but never enough to say which snake, or whether it's a snake at all. It's the road that whips your head toward a sudden movement in the corner of your vision before you've consciously seen a thing shouting move while the long road is still assembling the picture. And that, strangely, is the whole point of it. The short road was never built to be right. It was built to be early. How anyone worked this out is its own quiet drama, and it ran for years in the laboratory of the neuroscientist from a moment ago, Joseph Ledoux. Much of his career turned on a deceptively simple question. Where in the brain does a learned fear actually live? His animals learned to dread a harmless tone by hearing it a few times alongside a mild shock. And then, with great care, his team began to cut the roads. When they removed the long way round, taking out the hearing parts of the cortex, something unexpected happened. The animals went on learning to fear the tone exactly as before. The recognizing, reasoning cortex, it turned out, was not required for this at all. Only when the short road was severed too, the direct line from the thalamus down to the amygdala, did the fear learning finally fail. Either road alone was enough. You had to close both to keep the fear from forming. And buried in that result was an implication it would take the field years to feel the full weight of. Whatever fear is, its fastest and hardest form, did not need the part of us that knows. Ledoux gave the two routes the names that stuck, the high road and the low road, though you won't find that language in the careful prose of his journal papers. It comes from the book he later wrote for the rest of us, and like most good metaphors, it's a touch too tidy, but it earned its place because it holds on to the one thing that matters. Two ways to the alarm, a quick rough one and a slow exact one, both running at once. And the low road is where the famous number lives, the 12 milliseconds in the title hanging over all of this. It comes from the rat. Lower a fine electrode into the amygdala of an anesthetized animal, play it a sound, and you can catch the precise moment the rumour arrives by the short road. In the original measurements, somewhere between 12 and 25 thousandths of a second. The clean, quotable 12 is the fastest edge of that range, and it spread partly because Ledoux himself, writing for ordinary readers, rounded it down to something a person could hold in the hand. The figure is real and it's honest. It is also, every single time, a measurement taken from a rat. Whether we carry a clean version of the same shortcut, and whether, in us, it truly beats the long way round, is one of the genuine arguments still alive in the field, which is exactly why no careful person will hand you a tidy human number for it. That 12 milliseconds belongs to the rat. We are still arguing about ourselves. What the whole arrangement adds up to is a quiet refusal of an impossible choice. Speed or accuracy, every other creature has to pick one, and the brain, faced with that fork, simply declined and took both. Down the fast road goes speed, paid for in accuracy. Up the slow road goes accuracy, paid for in speed. Run the two at once, and a body gets to flinch now and understand a heartbeat later, hedging the one bet that was never safe to lose. Every time you've jumped at a coil of rope and felt foolish a moment after, this is the machine you were running. The short road threw your body clear of a snake that wasn't there. The long road came up just behind to murmur the correction and let your shoulders fall. None of it was a mistake. The flinch was the system spending a little dignity to buy a great deal of safety, exactly as it was built to. And for all that, there is no one at the fork making the call. The title overhead is generous when it speaks of a decision. Nothing in there is choosing, weighing the snake against the hose. There are only two wires of different lengths, and a signal that runs down both. A body simply moves on, whichever arrives first. Decision is the word we reach for afterward, standing at a safe distance, trying to make a story out of a race we were never fast enough to watch. In a little while, maybe 20 minutes from now, maybe less, you'll cross the border into sleep, and the long road will be among the first things to go. The careful, fact-checking, detail-resolving part of you, the part that recognizes and reasons and double-checks the world, quietly powers down before almost anything else does. The short road doesn't. It stays open a while longer, lit and listening, after the editor upstairs has already gone home for the night. And so, somewhere in that gap, you may feel it fire. A sudden lurch, as though you'd missed a step on a staircase that isn't there. The brief sense of falling, the small helpless grab, the whole body flinching hard at nothing you could name. It has a name too, the hypnic jerk, and most people have felt it. No one is entirely sure why it happens. but the shape of it is familiar by now. The short road firing one last time, throwing your body clear of a danger that was never there, in the final seconds before the part of you that might have corrected it goes dark. If it comes tonight, there's nothing you need to do about it. It's only the old shortcut, still at its post, still keeping a watch that no longer needs keeping, guarding the doorway as you go through. For all the elegance of the wiring, the roads are only roads. They carry the signal. They don't decide what it means. Everything, the flinch, the flood, the freeze, the whole long inheritance of fear, depends on the place both roads are racing toward. One small structure, deep in the brain, that every alarm in your life has had to pass through. The roads, in the end, are the easy part. The harder question is what that destination actually is. A question it took the better part of a century even to ask properly. And the story of how we first found out begins, improbably, with a monkey that woke one morning afraid of nothing at all. The monkey had been, by every account, impossible. A wild rhesus macaque, so fierce the laboratory could barely handle her, all teeth and fury at the bars. Then came the surgery. Both temporal lobes opened, a portion of each lifted out, and 3 weeks later, the fury was gone. Not subdued or medicated into calm, but gone, as though it had been carried off with the tissue. She sat quietly where she was put, and let herself be handled. And when they set before her a live snake, the thing every wild monkey flees on sight, she reached out and picked it up. She turned it over, brought it to her mouth, and examined it with the mild interest you might give a piece of fruit. Struck at, she'd flinch back, and then she'd reach for it again, as though the lesson hadn't taken, because the part of her that took such lessons had been lifted out too. The surgeons were Heinrich Klüver and Paul Bucy, working in Chicago in the late 1930s, and the monkey was one of several. What they were seeing wasn't only fearlessness. It came bundled with a whole strange constellation. The animals would pick up every object within reach and test it with their mouths. Bolts, stones, things no animal should willingly put in its mouth, as if the world had to be relearned by tongue. They looked at familiar things and no longer knew them, staring at a hand or a comb as if seeing it for the first time, every time. But it was the missing fear that stopped everyone cold. A creature built by millions of years of evolution to startle, to flee, to scream, sitting calm, mouthing a snake. Somewhere under the curve of that skull, the surgeons had cut out the thing that made the world frightening, and the animal had not died of it. It had simply gone serene. It is their names the textbooks kept. Klüver-Bucy syndrome, the whole strange cluster came to be called, though the two of them never used the phrase. And the tidy label hides an inconvenient fact. They had removed an enormous amount of brain. Both temporal lobes, entire, not the small thing that mattered, but everything around it for inches in every direction. They had proven that fear lived somewhere in that country. They could not say where, nor, it turned out, were they even the first to see it. Half a century earlier, 2 other researchers had already watched monkeys lose their fear after temporal damage, and the finding had slipped quietly out of memory. Discovery is rarely the clean event the eponyms suggest. It is usually a thing seen, forgotten, and seen again. The careful, narrowing work fell to a quieter figure, a young scientist named Lawrence Weisskranz, in the mid-1950s. Where Klüver and Bucy had taken a whole region, he took aim at a single structure inside it, removing the amygdala and as little else as he could manage, and watched the taming appear all over again. That fearlessness had never lived in the temporal lobe at large. It lived in that one almond of tissue. And he drew from it an idea sharper than fear alone, that without the amygdala, things lost their charge. A stimulus could still be seen and heard perfectly well, and yet fail to register as good or bad, safe or dangerous, worth approaching or worth fleeing from. Nor was it only fear that drained away. Food and company and mates lost their pull just as surely. The amygdala, he came to believe, dealt in significance of every kind. The desirable as much as the dangerous, the whole question of what is worth feeling anything about at all. And this is not only a fact about monkeys, the same emptying has been seen in people. When a severe infection burns through both temporal lobes, or surgery takes them to stop relentless seizures, a person can emerge changed in just these ways. Oddly placid, slow to fear what ought to frighten them, mouthing objects, gazing at familiar faces with no flicker of recognition. It is rare, and it is sobering to witness, and it says plainly that the almond does its quiet work in us no differently than in them. That almond is the structure this whole story has been circling, and it's time to meet it properly. Its name is a small joke of anatomy, amygdala from the Greek for almond, because that, more or less, is what it looks like. There are two of them, a matched pair, each buried deep behind the temple on its own side of the head, roughly an almond size and an almond shape, a little over a cubic centimetre of tissue, holding something like 12 million neurons apiece. It's small and old, and easy to miss on a scan if you don't know where to look. It works something like a tiny building with two doors. Through one, a region called the lateral nucleus, everything pours in. Both roads from before, the quick rumour and the slow, detailed report, arriving from the eyes and ears and skin, all of it delivered here to be weighed. Through the other, the central nucleus, the verdict leaves, carried out to the body as orders. Signals in one side, commands out the other. And in the small space between, in that single almond, the world gets sorted into what matters and what doesn't, what's safe and what isn't, faster than you will ever be shown. And it is doing this now, behind your own temples, two of them, quietly running. Every fear you have ever felt passed through one of these almonds first. The face that frightened you as a child, the near miss on the road, the shape in the dark that turned out to be nothing. All of it was weighed and waved through by a pair of structures buried deep behind your temples that you have never seen and never will. There's something almost tender in that, once it settles, that the whole vast architecture of your fear comes down, in the end, to two small almonds working in the dark to keep you alive. So here is a question for the dark. What is yours deciding about right now as you lie here? The room is being read, the angles of shadow, the sounds the house makes as it cools, the distance to the door, and somewhere behind your eyes, a verdict is forming about whether any of it is worth your fear. You won't be shown the reasoning, you never are. You'll only be handed the result, this stillness, this ease, this permission to let your eyes close. And what is it choosing not to show you? What small thing has it decided tonight isn't worth waking you for? The creak it filed away as the house, the shadow it logged as the chair. You'll never know the ones it waved through, only the rare one it doesn't. That, in the end, is what it means to be kept safe by something you can't see. You don't get the list of dangers it dismissed. You only get the sleep. But a verdict, on its own, is nothing. A flicker of current in a knot of tissue the size of an almond, sealed in the dark, with no voice and no hands. The amygdala cannot make your heart pound. It cannot flood your blood with anything, or freeze you to the spot, or pull your breath up high and shallow into your chest. It can only decide, and then send the decision out through that second door, down into the body, where the real machinery of fear is waiting. How a single spark in that almond becomes a whole body thrown into emergency is the oldest and most physical part of this story. And it begins the instant the verdict leaves. The verdict crosses out of the almond as a pulse of current, and within that same breath, the body is no longer the one it was a moment ago. The order arrives first at the hypothalamus, a structure no larger than a grape, sitting just beneath the amygdala, that serves as the body's master switch for everything automatic. Temperature, hunger, thirst, the turning of the day. Handed a threat, it does what it has done since long before there were people to feel it. It throws every switch at once, and here the story diverges from the one everyone knows. The phrase we've all inherited is fight or flight, as though the body, the instant it senses danger, either swings or runs. But that's rarely its first move. More often, the first thing it does is stop. The breath holds. The whole body locks into place, half crouched, every sense flung wide, and, strangely, the heart doesn't race. It slows. For a beat or two, it drops into a held hush, while the brain buys a precious fraction of a second to work out what it's truly facing. Freezing isn't the absence of a response, it's the opening move of the cascade. The pause before the choice to fight or flee, the body going still so the senses can get loud. Freeze and flight, it turns out, are run from the same small place, a column of grey matter buried in the midbrain, ancient enough that even fish carry a version of it. Which one fires depends, more than anything, on distance. A threat still far off, still uncertain, calls up the freeze. Hold, watch, gather. A threat bearing down, close and certain, releases the other program entirely. And when it does, the body you recognize from every fright of your life finally arrives. The hypothalamus fires the sympathetic nerves, and the adrenal glands, two small caps perched atop the kidneys, dump adrenaline straight into the blood. Now the storm breaks. Freed from its hush, the heart leaps and is hammering within a second or two. Pupils widen, breath climbs high and shallow into the top of the chest. Blood pulls inward and down, away from the skin and the stomach toward the big muscles of the legs, which is why the face pales, the hands turn cold, and the belly drops into that hollow, sinking weightlessness. The mouth goes dry. In the space of a single breath, the body has been rebuilt for one purpose: to move hard, now. It was Walter Cannon, 100 years ago, who gave all this its name: the emergency response, fight or flight, a body flinging every reserve it owns into a single violent effort. Cannon was right about the storm. He simply began the story a little late, at the running, after the stillness had already come and gone. There is one honest caveat worth slipping in here, because the textbooks rarely do. You'll read confident figures for all of this. Blood flow to the muscles leaping from a fifth of the body's supply to the lion's share, the guts allotment falling away to almost nothing. The numbers sound precise, and they are. They were just measured in the wrong people. Almost all of them come from volunteers on exercise bikes, pedaling to exhaustion in a lab. Not from anyone in the grip of actual fear. We borrowed the figures from exertion because a body in hard effort looks a great deal like a body in terror, and because it is far easier to study a willing cyclist than a frightened one. So trust the feeling. The cold hands and the hollow stomach are real, and yours, and ancient. Be a little wary of the tidy percentages. We have measured the fear in your body far less thoroughly than we like to pretend. The storm runs on 2 clocks. The first is adrenaline, fast and brief, doing its work in seconds and mostly cleared from the blood within a couple of minutes, which is why the sharpest edge of a fright passes so quickly. Behind it runs a slower, stranger clock. The hypothalamus has also set off a chemical chain that ends some 20 to 40 minutes later in a hormone called cortisol, a long, low tide that rises well after the danger is gone, mobilizing fuel, holding the body braced, settling the account. It's the reason that half an hour after a near miss on the road, the car long parked, the danger long past, your hands still won't quite steady while a wrung-out tiredness moves in to take fear's place. Step back from the storm for a moment, and something almost touching comes into view. Every part of this, the freeze, the surge, the cold hands, the slow cortisol tide, was perfected for a world your body still half believes it lives in. A world of leopards at the waterline and rival bands over the ridge, where a body that emptied its gut and flooded its legs and threw itself into motion was a body that lived to pass the trick along. That world is mostly gone. The machinery is not. It still fires, the whole full-body emergency for a curt email and an unanswered message, a comment in a meeting, a particular name lighting up a phone. It cannot tell the difference between a charging animal and a difficult silence. It never learned how. Your panic when it comes is not a flaw in you or a sickness of the modern age. What rises in you is something far older than you and far cruder, loving you the only way it knows, by throwing your whole body into an emergency over a threat that, more and more often now, was never there. All over the world tonight, in millions of darkened rooms, bodies are standing down from emergencies that never came. The cortisol of 100 small frights, the meeting, the message, the near thing on the drive home, is ebbing out of the blood at last. Heart rates are drifting down toward their slow night rhythm. Hands that were clenched are loosening. The old machinery, having spent the whole day braced against dangers that turned out to be emails, is finally being allowed to stand easy, organ by organ, muscle by muscle, in the dark. Somewhere in one of those rooms is you, and whatever your body braced against today, real or imagined, fought or merely feared, it is being released now, quietly, without your having to do a thing. The emergency, whatever it was, is over. The body is being given back the night. And yet, for all that it is ancient, the emergency is only half an inheritance. The response is fixed, the same freeze, the same surge, the same cold hands, handed down all but unchanged across the long roll of years. But the list of what sets it off is not fixed at all. No one was born braced at the sound of a particular name, or sick at the smell of a particular hospital corridor, or breathless at a ringtone. Those triggers were added one by a life, written into the amygdala by experience, in a process as precise as it is invisible. The body's emergency is the oldest thing in you. The reasons it now fires are among the newest. And how a single bad moment can teach that ancient machine to dread a sound it had never feared before is its own quiet feat of the brain, one we are only beginning to learn to read. It began, as these discoveries sometimes do, with saliva arriving too early. In a laboratory more than a century ago, dogs stood in harnesses, fed on a careful schedule, with fine tubes measuring the spit their mouths produced. And the physiologist running the room, a meticulous man named Ivan Pavlov, who had come to this almost by accident while studying digestion, noticed something his measurements wouldn't let him ignore. The dogs were drooling at the wrong moment, not when the food touched their tongues, but earlier, at the footstep of the attendant, the sight of the bowl, the sound of whatever signal Pavlov chose to give before each meal. The body had learned to answer the herald instead of the thing itself. Pair a meaningless sound with something that matters, again and again, and the sound stops being meaningless. It begins, on its own, to summon the whole response. You already know how this feels from the inside because it has been done to you 1,000 times without a harness or a tube in sight. A song comes on, the one from the worst summer of your life, and before you've placed it, your chest has tightened. A particular smell, antiseptic and sweet, drops you straight into a hospital corridor at 9 years old, the dread arriving a full second ahead of the memory. No one sat you down and taught you these. Life did, the way it taught Pavlov's dogs, by pairing. Something neutral happened to be present when something hurt, and your brain, doing exactly what it was built to do, quietly welded the two together. In the laboratory, the cleaner, harsher version of this has a name: fear conditioning, one of the most studied forms of learning in all of neuroscience. The recipe is brutally simple. Play an animal a neutral tone, a sound that means nothing, that it would otherwise ignore, and a second or two later, deliver a brief, mild shock. Do this a handful of times, then play the tone alone, and the animal freezes, its heart lurching, the whole cascade we just followed igniting on cue, for a sound that, a quarter of an hour ago, meant nothing at all. The tone has been taught to mean danger. One small neutral thing in the world has been turned permanently into a threat. And here is the part that turns a curiosity into something close to wonder. That learning is not a metaphor. It's a physical change you could, in principle, point to. Both signals, the tone and the shock, travel to the same small population of neurons in the lateral amygdala, that indoor we met before, where everything arrives to be weighed. The tone's signal, on its own, is weak. It taps at the neuron's door, and the door stays shut. But when the shock arrives at the very same instant, it flings that neuron wide open, and a connection that fires at exactly that moment, with the cell already lit, is a connection that gets strengthened. Fire together and you wire together. After a few such coincidences, the tone's signal no longer needs the shock's help. It has its own key now. The synapse carrying it has been physically enlarged, and the sound alone can throw the whole alarm. The molecule that does this, a tiny coincidence detector that opens only when both signals fire at once, is real and beautifully specific. The honest footnote is that it isn't the whole story. There are several chemical routes to the same strengthening, and all of them were mapped in the brains of rats and mice. We have good reason to think your amygdala works the same way. We have just never been able to watch it happen in you. The proof that it could be done to a person arrived in 1920, and the paper that delivered it, from two researchers at Johns Hopkins, is one you can still read today, equal parts foundational and indefensible. Their subject was a baby, a calm, healthy infant, not yet a year old, known in the record only as Albert. They showed him a white rat, and at first he was delighted by it, reaching out with the open curiosity of any child. Then they changed the terms. Each time he reached for the rat, one of them struck a steel bar with a hammer just behind his head, a clang loud enough to make a grown adult flinch. A handful of pairings was all it took. Soon the rat alone, with no sound at all, sent him into tears and scrambling away. And the fear didn't stay put. The same paper records how it spread, to a rabbit, to a dog, to a sealskin coat, to a Santa Claus mask, to the white hair of one of the experimenters. They had written a fear into a child and watched it generalize outward on its own. No ethics board on earth would permit it now. The child was never deconditioned, never helped to unlearn the fears they had built into him. And he left the study still afraid, and vanished into history. His real name, and what became of him, stayed a mystery for the better part of a century, and is argued over still. What the experiment proved is not in doubt. What it cost a particular small boy, we will never fully know. Strip away the cruelty of the method though, and little Albert was only being shown, fast and on purpose, what happens to all of us slowly and by accident. This is the machinery you carry. It's why one bad moment can mark you for decades. Why a particular ringtone can still drop your stomach years after those calls stopped coming. Why a stretch of road where something once went wrong can tighten your hands on the wheel before you've consciously remembered why. Your amygdala is built to overlearn the bad. There's no waiting for repetition. A single pairing of this and pain can be enough. There's no asking your permission. And the lesson doesn't fade easily. Because the thing that hurt you once was, in the world that shaped this machine, the thing most likely to hurt you again. A cruel kind of elegance, but elegance all the same. Your worst moments are the best remembered, not in spite of how badly they hurt, but precisely because of it. You'll fall asleep tonight carrying every fear you were ever taught, and you won't remember being taught most of them. That's the quiet paradox of this kind of learning. The moment that wrote the fear can fade completely. The room forgotten, the day lost, the face of whatever hurt you gone soft and unreachable, and still the connection it strengthened holds, intact, in the dark. The lesson outlives the memory of the lesson. The flinch outlives its own reason. So the part of you that did the learning and the part of you that could explain it have come apart, and tonight only one of them sleeps. You will go under. The fears will not. They'll keep their post in those small, strengthened synapses, asking nothing, needing no attention, waiting with infinite patience for a sound or a smell that may never come again. You are about to set down everything you know. What your body learned, it will go on holding for you all night without you. Everything we've followed so far, the shortcut, the almond, the cascade, the strengthened synapse, lives at a scale too small to see, in tissue you'll never lay eyes on. Pull back from it, all the way out to the scale of a whole life, and a strange question comes into focus. If fear is written into that almond, connection by connection, then the almond is not optional. It is the page the writing needs. So what would a person be who had no such page at all? Not someone brave who feels fear and masters it, but someone in whom the writing simply cannot happen because the place it is written has been quietly erased. Such a person is not a thought experiment. She is real. She has a name kept private behind 2 initials, and she has spent her life unable to be frightened by anything at all. The snake is draped across her hands, and she will not put it down. A thumb runs along its scales. She leans in close to watch the dark thread of its tongue flicker and asks the question of someone genuinely charmed. When it looks at her, what does it see? The people who brought her here are scientists, and they are attempting something they rarely get the chance to do. They are trying, carefully and on purpose, to frighten her. They've brought her to a shop full of the creatures that unsettle almost everyone. Snakes, spiders, the cold and legless, and the many-legged. It isn't working. 15 times now, she has asked to hold the larger ones, the ones the staff keep behind glass. "This is so cool," she keeps saying. And she isn't being brave. Bravery means feeling the fear and pushing through it. She has no fear to push through. She is known in the scientific record only as SM, 2 initials to keep the rest of her private. A rare disease called Urbach-Wiethe gradually turned both of her amygdalae to calcium, hardening and destroying them through her teenage years, and then stopped there. It took the almonds and almost nothing else. Her memory is intact, her intelligence ordinary, her senses sharp. She is, in every way anyone can measure, entirely herself. Except that the 2 small structures we have spent these chapters approaching are simply gone. And gone with them is the thing they were for. Somewhere in a healthy brain, a danger in the room makes a kind of light come on. A flare of alarm that floods the body and turns the head and says, without words, away. In SM, that light no longer lights. What no scientist could ever ethically do, reach into a healthy person and lift out the seat of their fear. A quiet, accidental disease had already done, and so handed the field an answer it could never have gone looking for. The snake shop was not a fluke, and the scientists made sure of it. They took her through a haunted attraction, one of those seasonal places built to make people scream, and she led the group, calling back over her shoulder, "This way, follow me." When the costumed monsters lunged from the dark, she didn't flinch. She laughed, and at one point reached out and poked one of them in the head, curious what it was made of. The monster jumped. She did not. They sat her down with horror films, the kind engineered to spike the pulse, and she watched them with mild interest, asking the name of one so she could find it later. And across 3 months, prompted at random moments to record what she was feeling, she returned again and again to the same flat report. In a life that held real dangers in it, she was moving through almost entirely without fear. It would be easy to mistake this for a kind of blunting, as if the world had simply gone dim for her. But that isn't it at all. She is not stupid about danger. Ask her, and she'll tell you plainly that a snake can kill, that a dark and empty street is a place to be careful, that a gun is a deadly thing. The knowledge is all there, perfectly intact. What's missing is the feeling that's supposed to come with it, the cold drop in the stomach, the small backward step, the body's wordless no. It is something like knowing as a plain fact that a stove is glowing red hot, and laying your bare hand flat against it and feeling nothing pull it back. The fact and the flinch have come apart, knowing and fearing, which in you arrive fused into a single instant, have for her been quietly separated, and only one of them is left. And it isn't only the large, dramatic fears that vanished. The amygdala does quieter work too, all day long beneath everything. Show SM a photograph of a face, and she can tell you whose it is and what it's doing. But she struggles to read fear on it, the particular look that means something here is wrong. Show her strangers and ask which seem trustworthy. And she rates the shifty and the unsettling ones as perfectly approachable, friendly, fine. The 1,000 tiny alarms the rest of us live by, the quiet voice that says, "Don't trust him, not down there, something's off," she simply does without. She has lost more than terror. She has lost suspicion too, the prickle on the back of the neck, the whole quiet apparatus of mistrust. And here the story turns and gets harder. By every account of those who know her, SM is an unusually warm and trusting person, open with strangers, quick to like and be liked. And it is precisely that openness, so easy to love, that has so often left her exposed. A life without fear sounds at first like a kind of liberation, and in some real ways it is. She is not tormented. She is not anxious, not haunted by dread, not held back from anything by the cold weight of what if. But fear was never only a cage. It is also a guardrail, the hand at your back that keeps you from the edge. Because she cannot feel it, SM has been led, again and again, into danger she could not sense her way out of, threatened, robbed, badly used by people the prickle on the neck might have warned the rest of us away from. The protection we resent, the flinch we'd give anything to switch off, turns out to have been steering us all our lives, away from 1,000 bad corners we never even knew we'd avoided. She has none of that quiet steering, and she has paid for the lack. Her story leaves a strange vertigo behind, because two feelings arrive together and refuse to resolve into one. Part of you envies her, and how could you not? Your own fear simply switched off. The 3 a.m. spirals gone, the lurch when the phone lights up gone, the low, constant hum of worry you've carried so long you've stopped hearing it, finally and completely quiet. And part of you pities her, because that same vast silence is exactly what left her undefended in a world that has edges. Your fear is a cage. There's no denying it. It holds you back, wears you down, keeps you small. But it is also the oldest and most faithful thing you own. The watchman that has stood between you and the edge every day of your life, asking nothing, thanked never. Right now, the very alarm you'd give anything to quiet is the one keeping you safe enough to sleep. And in a way, the night gives you a small, safe taste of her freedom. As you sink towards sleep, those warning lamps are being dimmed, one by one, all across the brain. The vigilance lowered, the dreads unlit. The watchman told he can rest his eyes a while. The warning lamps of your fears go dark for the night, not destroyed the way hers were, only switched gently off, the way a house falls quiet room by room as everyone in it finally sleeps. The difference is simply this. In the morning, your lamps come back. The watchman wakes, the alarms relight, and the whole apparatus of caution resumes its post before you've even opened your eyes. For these few dark hours, though, you get to set it all down. The freedom SM lives in always, lent to you briefly and with none of the cost. You don't have to keep watch tonight. Something will, and then, at first light, it will hand the watch back to you. What SM proves, more cleanly than any deliberate experiment ever could, is that fear was never the child of knowing. She knows everything there is to know about danger and feels none of it because the feeling lived somewhere beneath the knowing, in a structure that ran without ever consulting the part of her that thinks, and that is simply, now, not there. Which leaves one stranger question still standing. If fear can run entirely apart from knowing in one direction, all the knowledge, none of the fear, can it also run apart in the other? Can the alarm flare for a threat the conscious mind never sees at all? No recognition, no awareness, the eyes themselves blind, and the fear arriving anyway, out of the dark. It sounds at first like a contradiction in terms, to be frightened by a face you cannot see, to step around a danger your eyes never reported to you. For most of the history of this science, that was how such claims were treated. As a confusion, a thing that simply could not happen, since seeing is what eyes are for, and fear, surely, must wait on sight. And then a small number of people, through the cruelest sort of accident, proved that it happens all the time. Cortical blindness is stranger than the ordinary kind. The eyes can be flawless, the nerves that carry their signals inward perfectly intact, and the person still completely blind because the damage lies further in the visual cortex, the broad sheet of tissue at the back of the brain, where raw signal is finally turned into the experience of seeing. Destroy that, and the lights go out, even though the cameras still work. A man known in the literature as TN lost his sight to 2 strokes, months apart, each one taking the visual cortex on one side, until both were gone. By every test anyone can devise, and by his own account, he is totally blind. He sees nothing at all. And yet, show him photographs of faces he cannot see. Ask him to guess what each one is feeling, afraid, or angry, or glad, and he is right far more often than chance should allow. The whole time, he insists he is only guessing, picking at random in the dark. He is not. Something in him is reading the faces his eyes can no longer show him. The most haunting demonstration came later, and it had nothing to do with faces. They took TN to one end of a long corridor and cleared his white cane away. The corridor was not empty. It had been strewn with obstacles, a box here, a chair there, things set out precisely to trip a blind man, and no one told him any of it was there. They simply asked him to walk to the far end, and he did. He walked the length of it, weaving, slaloming, easing his body around the chair and stepping past the box, and reached the other side without so much as brushing a single one. Afterward, when they asked how he'd managed it, he was baffled by the question. He hadn't known there was anything to avoid. Something had steered him, fluently and precisely, around every danger in a corridor he was certain was empty, and he had not been home for any of it. How can a man see nothing and avoid everything? The answer is that the signal from his eyes never stopped reaching his brain. It simply lost its way to the one place that would have made it conscious. The cortex was gone. The road there was cut. But there is an older, deeper route the signal can still take, running beneath the cortex entirely down through a couple of ancient relay stations and on toward the amygdala, the same low road we followed earlier, in the dark. On that route, the light never becomes sight. It never reaches the part of him that could say, "I see a chair." But it reaches the alarm, and the alarm can still turn a body, still lift a foot over an obstacle, still flinch from a face. All of it in the dark, none of it ever surfacing as something seen. When researchers watched another such patient, a man called GY, blind across half his field, they could very nearly see this happening. As fearful faces were shown to his blind side, his amygdala lit up, and it lit up in concert with 2 small structures buried deep beneath the cortex, the way stations of that hidden route. The road itself, in a sense, glowed on the scan, and there is a quiet symmetry worth pausing on. The word for this whole uncanny ability, blindsight, was coined by Lawrence Weisskranz, the same patient, careful scientist who, decades before, had narrowed a monkey's lost fear down to the amygdala. The man who found where fear lives also named the act of seeing without knowing you see. It would be easy to stop here, with a clean and beautiful story, a secret shortcut, a hidden road carrying fear beneath sight. And the temptation to stop is exactly the place to slow down, because the clean story may be too clean. What is not in doubt is the phenomenon. These people respond reliably to things they cannot consciously see. How they do it, by what road the unseen signal travels, is genuinely unsettled. And some of the most careful people in the field think the single shortcut picture is probably wrong. Ralph Adolphs, one of the scientists who mapped SM's fearlessness, is among those who argue there may be no one dedicated pathway at all, but many partial ones. Scraps of surviving tissue, several routes each doing a little, a messier and more distributed arrangement than the elegant single road suggests. And all of it rests on a mere handful of people, each one a rare and singular accident. The honest position, for now, is to hold the route loosely and the phenomenon firmly. That fear can arrive without sight is settled. The map of how is still being drawn. And you don't need a ruined visual cortex to know this from the inside. The everyday version runs in you constantly, just below the line of notice. It's the flicker of movement at the edge of your vision that turns your head before you've seen a thing. It's the car you step back from at the curb, a half second before you've registered it moving, and the face in a crowd that tugs your eye toward it just before you know whose it is. In every one of those moments, a part of you saw the thing and acted on it before the rest of you was told, caught the danger, answered it, and only afterward filed a report you experienced as a hunch or a flinch or nothing at all. TN's condition is only the extreme, made visible of a quieter truth about all of us, that seeing and knowing you see are two different events, and the alarm has always answered to the first, never waiting for the second. Right now, as you listen, your eyes are closed, or open on a dark room, and you're seeing almost nothing. And still, that older reader is at its post, taking in the little there is, the pale shape of the window, the mass of the furniture against the wall, any movement, if there were any, which there isn't. It's reading the dark the way it read that corridor for TN, beneath sight and beneath words, and finding, tonight, nothing it needs to raise you for. In a way, you are closer to him now than at almost any other hour, seeing nothing, and watched over all the same by the part of you that was never seeing with your eyes to begin with. You can let the looking go. Something deeper than looking has had the room all along. Put it all together, and the case looks closed. Take the amygdala away, as a disease took SMs and fear vanishes. Even the knowledge of danger can't summon it back. Leave it in place, and it finds threat in the dark, behind closed eyes, past the ruin of sight. By every line of evidence we have followed, it is the one indispensable organ of fear, the thing fear cannot exist without, which makes a person like SM seem perfectly, permanently sealed against it. Proof against snakes, against monsters, against anything the world could send at her from outside, and it raises a question that feels almost too settled to bother asking. Is there anything at all still capable of frightening her? Any threat from any direction that could reach a person with no alarm left to receive it? It sounds impossible. It is precisely the kind of impossible this story is about to overturn. They fit the mask over her face, and for a few seconds she is fine. The same calm, faintly curious woman she has always been in their care, breathing easily, waiting to see what they want. Then a single breath of air slips into the mask, air thickened with carbon dioxide, and within seconds the room changes. She is clawing at the straps, gasping that she can't breathe, fighting to get the mask off, her whole body in the grip of a terror she will later call the worst of her life. The woman who could not be frightened, who held the snake, who led the way through the haunted house, who reached out and poked the monster, is, for the first time anyone has ever recorded, helplessly and totally afraid. And nothing from the outside world did it. No snake, no shadow, no threat her missing alarm was ever built to catch. Just one breath of her own air. It was not a fluke, and it was not only her. The gas was ordinary air enriched with carbon dioxide, about a third of the mix, which is the standard, reliable way a laboratory provokes a panic attack on demand. They gave that same single breath to SM and to 2 other women who, by the same rare disease, had lost both of their amygdala, a pair of twin sisters, the same accident written twice. All 3 of them panicked, everyone. And then comes the detail that should stop you. Among the healthy volunteers they tested, amygdalae fully intact, most did not panic at all. The people with no fear center, in other words, proved easier to frighten than the people who had one. Whatever the last several chapters had been quietly building toward, a third of a breath of a common gas had just knocked it flat. So the simple verdict was wrong, and it's worth being precise about how. SM is not incapable of fear. That was always too large a claim. She is incapable of one kind of fear, the kind that comes from outside her, from the world, from the snake and the shadow and the stranger, the fear her amygdala existed to raise. But fear, it turns out, has more than one door, and this one opened from the inside. Deep in the brainstem, far below the almond and far older, sit sensors that do nothing all day but monitor the chemistry of your own blood and, above everything else, your air. Let carbon dioxide climb and the blood tip a fraction toward acid, and those ancient sensors throw a switch that needs no amygdala, knows nothing of snakes, and produces the most primal terror a body can hold. I cannot breathe. There is a reason that particular alarm is so violent. You can go weeks without food, days without water, but only minutes without air, and the brain knows it. Of all the body's needs, breath is the one with no margin, no grace period, no second chance, and so the suffocation alarm is built to overwhelm everything else the instant it fires. It is most likely the same alarm, misfiring behind a panic attack. That sudden, sourceless certainty that you can't get enough air when a measurement would show your blood is perfectly fine. Not weakness and not real suffocation. Only this old watchman, every so often, crying danger where there is none. For most of these chapters, the case for the amygdala had been building toward a single, satisfying verdict. This is the fear center, the seat of dread, the thing terror cannot do without. The snake seemed to prove it. SM seemed to seal it. And one breath of carbon dioxide walked straight through the wall. So the question forces itself, was the phrase ever right? If a woman with no fear center can be made more afraid than anyone in the room by a root that never goes near it, then in what sense was it ever the center of anything? Perhaps it was never where fear lived. Perhaps it was only one of the places where threat is spotted, a single informant reporting in to a feeling assembled somewhere we have not yet found. And here an old, quiet question rises through the floor of all of it. We can say now, where the brain notices a threat. We have spent these hours doing little else, tracing the roads, the almond, the watcher in the brainstem that listens to the breath. What we cannot say, what no instrument has ever once located, is where the fear is felt, where that flood of raw first-person dread, the wordless and total I can't breathe, is actually had. The amygdala detects, the brainstem detects too, and somewhere past all the detecting someone is afraid, and we do not know where or how or whether where is even the right question to ask. Detection we can follow down to the single cell. Feeling slips through every net we throw at it. One breath pried the two apart and showed that the place where danger is spotted and the place where dread is suffered may not be the same place at all, and that we only ever called the almond a fear center because across an ordinary life, the spotting and the suffering arrive so close together that no one thought to look for the seam. An hour ago this all felt settled. The almond, the alarm, the seat of fear, a place you could point to. One breath of slightly altered air took it gently apart and left something stranger and truer in its place, that fear has a door you have never once thought about, an alarm that lives not in any center but in the plain chemistry of your own breathing. You are breathing now without deciding to, and something is reading each breath, has read every breath you have ever taken, from a place older than the almond, older than thought, asking only one question over and over all your life. Is there still enough air? And what is the answer tonight? Yes, there is plenty. The air is good, your blood is calm and clear, and the old watchman at the base of your brain has nothing at all to report. So it does the kindest thing it knows. It lets you slow. Your breathing will lengthen on its own as you drift, softening, settling, the way it is meant to. And that ancient sensor will ride it down without a flicker of alarm, because this is not danger. This is only rest. What would it take to disturb it tonight? Almost nothing you will meet in the dark, so you can stop listening for your own breath. Something far older than you is listening for you, and it is not worried in the least. All of which leaves the amygdala stranger and more interesting than its simple title ever suggested. If it is not the seat of fear after all, only one informant among several, then the question becomes what it is actually for. And part of the answer, it turns out, has nothing to do with the present moment at all. The amygdala works on time. A frightening thing doesn't merely alarm you while it's happening. It gets stamped in, kept, made strangely permanent, so that years from now a single note of a song or a particular smell can summon the whole of it back. Of all the millions of moments that make up a life, the brain quietly chooses the few you will never be allowed to forget. And it chooses overwhelmingly the ones that frightened you. Your past, in other words, is not a fair record of your life. It is a record of your fears. You know the kind of memory this is, even if none is surfacing for you right now. The one that arrives on its own, uninvited. A face, a stretch of road, a thing someone said, a moment you'd have chosen to forget if choosing were allowed. It comes back whole, in full colour, with the temperature of the air and the look on the face, sharper somehow than what you had for breakfast this morning. And that was hours ago, while this was years. Some of these are sweet. But the ones that come back hardest, the ones that ambush you in a quiet moment and won't quite leave, are almost always the ones that frightened or shamed or hurt you. Almost all of your life, by contrast, is simply gone. Last Tuesday, the drive home yesterday, the 1,000 small exchanges and meals and rooms that made up entire years, the brain throws nearly all of it away, and it has to. A mind that kept every moment in equal detail would drown, but out of that endless discarding, a few moments are pulled aside and kept in vivid and permanent detail, and they are not pulled at random. They are, overwhelmingly, the moments that mattered to your survival, by a measure you never consciously set. The frights, the shocks, the dangers, the times something went badly wrong. Which moments stay and which dissolve is not chance. Something is choosing, and it has a bias. The thing choosing is the amygdala, though not in the way you might guess. It does not hold your memories. The face, the road, the moment itself live elsewhere, scattered as a pattern across millions of neurons in the hippocampus and the cortex, less like a photograph in a drawer than like a chord waiting to be struck. Recalling the moment means striking that chord again, firing the same scattered ensemble in roughly the same order until the moment plays once more. What the amygdala does is stamp that chord as it forms. At the instant of fear, awash in the stress hormones the alarm releases, it sends a single chemical instruction to the storehouse: this one, keep this one, strengthen it, deepen it, make it last. This is the life's work of a neuroscientist named James McGaw, who spent more than half a century proving it in the cleanest way imaginable. Teach an animal something neutral, then give it a dose of stress hormone just afterward, and the memory locks in far deeper than it had any right to. Block those same hormones at the moment of a fright, and a thing that should have scarred itself in fades instead like any forgettable afternoon. The emotion, McGaw showed, does not create the memory. It tells the memory how hard to hold on. And the bias makes brutal sense. In the world that shaped this, the thing that frightened you was, more often than not, the thing most likely to kill you. So a brain that kept its frights in extra sharp, permanent detail was a brain better armed for the next encounter, and one more likely to survive to keep on remembering. The vividness is not cruelty, it is preparation. The memories you would most like to be rid of are precisely the ones some ancient part of you decided you could least afford to lose. But here is the strange catch, and it matters. The amygdala turns up the vividness of a memory, and the confidence, the certainty that you could never, ever get this one wrong. What it does not turn up is the accuracy. Psychologists have a name for the sharpest of these: flashbulb memories, the frozen photographic images people carry of the moment they heard some piece of terrible news. Where they were standing, who told them, the exact light in the room. They feel perfect. People will swear by them for the rest of their lives. And when researchers thought to check, writing down what people remembered the morning after a great public shock, then asking them again years later, the flashbulb memories turned out to be no more accurate than ordinary ones. They had drifted, decayed, rearranged themselves. People recalled with total conviction and in vivid detail things that had not happened that way at all. The reason is built into what a memory is. You do not replay a memory, you rebuild it every single time from its scattered pieces, and the rebuild is never quite identical to the last. Each recall edits a little. So the memories you return to most, the frightening ones, the ones the amygdala flagged for endless replay, are quietly the most rewritten of all, drifting furthest from the original even as they feel the most carved in stone. Your most certain memory and your most accurate one are not always, it turns out, the same memory. There is a strange gratitude buried in all of this, if you can find your way to it. The memory that ambushes you, the fright or the shame that won't fully fade, you might curse it, and fair enough. But it is there because it was useful once to someone whose blood you carry. Because an ancestor of yours survived a danger by not forgetting it, and handed down a brain that keeps the worst things close, on purpose, the way you might keep a hand near a flame to remember that it burns. It is a clumsy, fierce kind of care. Over-remembering your frights so that you might live long enough to be annoyed by the remembering. The brain is not trying to torment you with the past. It is trying, in the only language it has, to keep you out of the next one. And tonight, while you sleep, it will do this work again. Once you're under, the day will be played back in the dark, the brain riffling through the hours you lived, deciding what to file and what to release. Most of today will be let go, the way most days are. The meals, the screens, the small forgettable motions of an ordinary life. But the few charged moments, the ones that frightened you or moved you or mattered, will be carried deeper, strengthened, moved toward the permanent collection. You won't be consulted in any of it. By the time you wake, today will already be slightly different from the day you actually lived. A little gone, a few pieces locked in for good, and you will never know which is which. All this chemistry, the hormones, the flagged chord, the night's quiet filing, lands, in the end, somewhere very human, in a whole life shaped by what it could not put down. A single bad second on a stretch of highway, kept so vividly that the road itself becomes unusable. A childhood dog, a closed door, a hospital smell, stamped in so deep that decades later the grown adult still cannot go near it. The amygdala's gift for keeping fear is also, for a great many people, a kind of sentence, a dread written once, in an instant, and held for a lifetime with no apparent way to set it down. Which raises the question the whole rest of this turns on. If a fear can be burned in that fast and kept that hard, can it ever be taken back out? Can a fear, once written, be unwritten, or at least somehow quieted? Quieted, yes. That much the brain manages all the time. But it does it in a way far stranger and far more telling than simply switching the fear off. When a phobia finally loosens its grip, when the dread that ran a life at last lets go, it is natural to assume the fear was removed, lifted out, deleted, gone. It almost never is. What happens instead is closer to building. The old fear is left exactly where it was, intact, fully furnished, every detail of it preserved. And over the top of it, the brain raises a new room. A room that says, this is safe now. As long as you are standing inside the new room, the old one is out of sight, and you are free. But it was never torn down. It is right there on the other side of a wall the brain has only just built. The wall has a real mechanism behind it. Behind your forehead sits the prefrontal cortex, the slow, reasoning, updating part of the brain, and it can reach down into the amygdala and lean on it, through a small cluster of cells whose entire job is to say no. When you learn, slowly and by experience, that a thing you feared is no longer a threat, the prefrontal cortex builds that lesson and uses it to hold the old alarm down, catching the amygdala's verdict before it can reach the body. The fear is still being made underneath every time. The almond has not changed its mind, has not unlearned a thing. Its signal is simply being intercepted and pressed flat on the way out. Which is also why you can't talk yourself or anyone else out of a fear, not really. An almond does not take arguments. A break like this is never built by being told the truth. It is built only by living it, by going close to the feared thing again and again, until the body has gathered enough evidence to raise a new room of its own. This is the engine inside the most reliable treatment we have for fear, exposure therapy. The principle is exactly the one we've been describing, applied with patience and great care. Someone whose life has narrowed around a terror, of dogs, of heights, of driving since the accident, of the memory itself, is brought toward the feared thing by inches, not flung at it, eased toward it, in a safe place with a hand to hold. The spider stays in its tank across the room and nothing bad happens. Then the tank comes nearer and still nothing happens. Then it's open, and then, one day, the spider is resting on the back of a hand and the sky has not fallen. Each small, safe step lets the prefrontal cortex lay down another course of brick in that new room, and slowly, never quickly, the dread that ruled a life begins to loosen. Researchers like Gregory Quirk, Mauricio Milad, and Elizabeth Phelps spent years tracing this, in animals and then in people, watching the prefrontal cortex light up as the fear came down. It works. For a great many people, it gives back a life the fear had quietly stolen. But a room built over a fear is still only a room, and the fear beneath it never went anywhere, which means it can come back. There are 3 reliable ways it does. Leave the place where you learned to feel safe, and the old fear can rise again in a new setting because the safety was learned in a particular room and is, oddly, half stuck there. Let enough time pass and it can return on its own, the new room weathering and thinning faster than the old one ever does. Or meet the feared thing once more on a bad day, one genuine scare, and the whole fear can snap back, fully formed, as though the weeks of careful work had never happened. You may know the shape of this from your own life, a fear you were sure you'd beaten, gone for years, that came flooding back whole the moment you stood again in the place it began. It can feel like failure, like proof the healing was never real, but it isn't, and it wasn't. The healing was real. The fear was simply never yours to delete. And here it's worth pushing back on the way this is usually told. The persistence of fear gets framed as a flaw, the brain's stubborn refusal to let us heal cleanly, a problem the next drug or technique will finally solve. But think about what true erasure would actually mean. If a fear could be deleted by the root, then every calm afternoon near the feared thing would risk wiping out a lesson that might, one day, be the thing that saves your life. A creature that could be fully talked out of its fears would be a creature one smooth voice, one good day, one act of forgetting away from walking straight back into what nearly killed it. The brain's refusal to ever quite let go of an old fear, to bury it, suppress it, build over it, but never erase it, is not stubbornness. It is a refusal to bet your survival on the assumption that danger is permanently in the past. Extinction quiets the fear without ever fully believing the world has changed. And that is not a failure of the system. It is one of the oldest mercies it knows, to let you live free of a fear while keeping it, just in case, for you. All over the world tonight, that prefrontal brake is loosening its grip. All day, in millions of people, it has been doing its quiet, tiring work, holding down the small dreads, talking the body off 100 false alarms, keeping the old fears in their rooms so that life could go on. And as those millions fall asleep, the hand eases off. Not because anything has gone wrong, but because, for these few hours, nothing has to be held. The effort of managing your fears, an effort so constant you long ago stopped feeling its weight, is being set down for the night, the way you'd finally set down a bag you'd carried so far you'd forgotten you were carrying it. You don't have to keep anything in its room tonight. Sleep has its own quieter ways of tending to the day's fears, ways we're still learning to read. For now, it is enough to let the grip loosen and let the weight go, and trust that nothing tonight needs holding down. For all that mercy, though, the dream never quite dies. Quieting is one thing. The suppressed fear sitting in its sealed room, ready to return, is a daily fact of life for anyone who has fought a phobia or a trauma, and it is hard not to wish for something cleaner. Not to build a wall in front of the door, but to take the door out entirely. Not to quiet the fear, but to reach in and unwrite it. To find the memory itself, that original strengthened cord, and pull it loose by the root. For most of the history of this science, that was pure fantasy, on the order of unbaking a cake. And then, right around the turn of this century, a single strange experiment cracked the door open and suggested that a fear, under the right conditions in a narrow window of time, might be made erasable after all. It is one of the oldest wishes there is, to reach back into your own past and lift out a single memory, the one that poisons everything it touches, the moment you would give almost anything not to carry, and leave the rest of you intact. It runs through 100 films and 1,000 private prayers, the fantasy of a clean deletion, not to grow around the wound or make slow peace with it, but to have it simply, surgically gone. And for nearly all of human history, it was exactly that, a fantasy. A memory once made was made. You might bury it or build over it, as we've seen. You could never erase it. Then, at the turn of this century, that certainty developed a hairline crack. The crack came from an unlikely place and an unlikely person. For most of a century, the rule had been firm. A memory, once consolidated, once it had settled out of the fragile new state and into long-term storage, was permanent, fixed, beyond reach. Then a young researcher in Joseph Ledoux's lab, Karim Nader, proposed something close to heresy. He suggested that every time you pull a memory up and recall it, you don't simply read it off the shelf. You briefly take it down, soften it, return it to that fragile, unfinished state, and it has to be actively resaved, all over again, to survive. And in the window while it's down, the minutes and hours after you've called it to mind, before it re-hardens, it is open, changeable, even erasable. Ledoux, by his own account, did not believe it would work. Nader did it anyway. He gave a rat a fear it had thoroughly learned, made it recall that fear, and then, right in the open window, blocked the brain's machinery for resaving it. And the fear did not come back. Not suppressed, not quieted, but gone, as though it had never been taught at all. The implication was staggering, and it inverted everything. A memory is not an engraving in stone. It is more like a document that must be saved again every single time you open it, and that, in the moment it sits open, can be quietly edited or thrown away, which means the very act of remembering a fear, the thing that seems to keep it so stubbornly alive, is also the one moment it becomes possible to take apart. The door to erasing a fear, it turns out, is the fear itself, briefly held open. You cannot reach the memory while it sleeps. You can only reach it by waking it. The obvious next question was whether any of this could touch a human being and a real one's real suffering. And the tool, it turned out, was already on the shelf of every pharmacy. Propranolol is an ordinary heart medicine, a beta blocker prescribed for decades for blood pressure and a racing pulse. And what it happens to block is adrenaline, the very hormone the amygdala uses, as we saw, to burn an emotional memory deep. So the idea took shape. Bring a person with a traumatic memory to recall it deliberately, to open it, while propranolol sits in their blood, intercepting the adrenaline that would otherwise re-cement the memory's emotional charge. Do that a handful of times, across a handful of weeks, and perhaps the memory loses its teeth, still there, still rememberable, but drained of the dread that made it unlivable. One influential trial, led by a researcher named Alain Brunet, did precisely this with people suffering from post-traumatic stress, and reported just that, week by week, session by session, the grip of the trauma loosening. For a moment, it looked as if the oldest wish had finally come true. And then the field did the thing that separates science from wishing. It checked. Harder. A larger and more careful trial, with Brunet himself among its authors, which tells you something about the integrity of the people involved, gave the same drug, the same way, to more patients, and found no difference at all. Both groups, drug and placebo, got better at exactly the same rate. When other researchers went back and redid the arithmetic across all the studies, accounting for the disappointing ones that had quietly gone unpublished, the reliable effect thinned, and in the strictest accounting, it vanished. So here is the honest shape of it, stated plainly rather than dressed up. The animal result, neighed as rats, the reactivated fear blocked from re-saving, is solid, replicated many times over, not seriously in doubt. The human dream is a different and unsettled thing. We do not, as of right now, have a proven way to reach into a person and erase a fear. We have a real and beautiful mechanism, a few tantalizing successes, an equal number of honest failures, and a question that remains genuinely, frustratingly open. There is an ache in this, and you may have been feeling it for a few minutes now. Somewhere in the last few minutes, you've likely had your own memory in hand, the one you'd lift out if the lifting were possible, the moment that still costs you something each time it surfaces, the weight you'd set down in an instant if you only knew how. And the most honest thing this science can offer you tonight is not yet, maybe not ever, not cleanly. The hope is genuine and the mechanism is genuine, and still the cure keeps arriving in the laboratory and dissolving on the way to the clinic. It is a singular kind of ache, to be shown the door and handed the key and then told the lock is older and stranger than anyone guessed. But there is a gentler truth to carry into the dark with you. The very process this chapter has described, a memory going soft when it's touched, then reforming, resaving, settling back into place, is about to run across the whole of your mind tonight while you sleep. Sleep is the great nightly resaving. Every memory you reached for today went briefly open when you reached for it, and tonight, in the quiet, each one reforms and resettles, made solid again by morning. And though we cannot yet erase a fear on command, the sleeping brain does its own slow, patient kind of work on the day's small frights, work we're still only beginning to understand, handling them again in the dark, and it seems filing them back with a little less charge than they carried at noon. You don't have to lift anything out tonight. You only have to let the night do what it has always done. Take the day, soften it, and hand it back in the morning a fraction easier to hold. The whole reason we chase this so hard, the labile window, the heart drug, the dream of a clean deletion, is not really the lab. It is the people for whom fear has stopped being a feeling and become a sentence. We have spoken about quieting fears and erasing them as though everyone gets to choose, as though fear is something we have and might put down. But there are people for whom fear has them and will not let go, for whom the alarm, once tripped, simply never switches off again, for whom the worst memory does not fade or soften but returns, uninvited, night after night, year after year, as vivid as the hour it was made. The circuit jams in the on position and stays there, and no quieting and no erasing yet known has set them free. To understand why we wanted so desperately to reach in and pull the memory out, you have to meet the people still living inside the thing we couldn't reach. The man sitting across from the young doctor was, by every outward measure, a success, a law firm partner, a husband, a father, a decorated former Marine. Inside, he said, he was dead. He had come because of the nights. Every night, or near it, the same dream returned. A rice paddy in a country he'd left a decade before, an ambush, the men of his platoon dying around him in the dark. Each time, he woke soaked and shaking, his heart going like a hammer, the war still unfolding behind his open eyes. The doctor, new to all of this, offered the obvious mercy. There were medications that could soften the dreams, perhaps end them, and the man refused. He would not give up the nightmares, he explained, because they were the only thing he had left of the men who had died beside him. To sleep peacefully would be to abandon them a second time. The nightmare, he said, was a living memorial. What the man had is now called post-traumatic stress, and at its core lies a single, devastating malfunction. The alarm we have spent this whole journey admiring, the fast, ancient, life-saving system that throws the body clear of danger before thought can arrive, gets stuck in the on position and will not stand down long after the danger is gone. The war ended years ago. The crash is long over. The room where the worst thing happened is 1,000 miles and a decade away. But the body was never told. It stays braced and scanning and ready, flinching at shadows, sleeping with one eye open, as though the threat were still somewhere in the house. Because to the part of the brain that runs fear in a way that matters, it still is. The most extreme form this takes is the flashback, and the word memory does not begin to hold it. A flashback is not remembering the worst day, it is reliving it. The difference between those two things is the difference between everything. To remember a fire is to picture it from here, knowing, even as you do, that it is over, that you are safe, that this is now. A flashback tears all of that away, the over, the safe, the now, and drops a person back inside the fire, in full and present tense, the body utterly convinced it is happening again, this second. Researchers have watched it happen inside a scanner. A man who had survived one of the worst road accidents in his country's history, a pileup of dozens of cars in dense fog, was played a recording describing his own crash and relived it as though it were unfolding in that instant, his heart and blood pressure surging in a machine in a quiet room. And the scan showed, in lights, what a flashback is. The alarm blazed. 2 other regions went dark. One was the small area that stamps an experience with its time, the part that files a thing as then and not now, and without it, the memory loses its past tense and becomes the present. The other was the brain's machinery for speech, which is why survivors so often call a flashback a speechless terror, a horror that cannot be spoken because in the grip of it, the words themselves have gone offline. What has actually gone wrong underneath is best understood as a loop that cannot close. In a healthy fright, the cycle completes: threat, alarm, response, and then the all clear, the prefrontal brake reaching down to say it's over, stand down, and the whole system resets and files the event safely in the past. In post-traumatic stress, that final step never comes. The loop runs and never closes. And the single most reliable finding in the science points right at it. People with this condition can learn that they are safe, but they cannot hold on to the lesson. The safe room they build, the one we watched go up brick by brick, keeps quietly collapsing, and the fear pours back in. The rest of the picture is messier than the confident headlines, and this is a place where honesty earns its keep. The popular version says the amygdala is simply overactive, cranked too high. But across careful studies, that finding is surprisingly inconsistent, often clearer in other kinds of anxiety than in this one. And the famous claim of a shrunken hippocampus, the brain's memory keeper, turns out to be a small effect. And here is the part that ought to change how we talk about all of it, partly something people brought with them. When researchers studied identical twins in which only one had been to war, they sometimes found the same smaller structure in the twin who had stayed home and seen nothing at all. Which means it may be less a wound the trauma carved than a vulnerability a person was simply born carrying, making them, through no weakness and no fault of their own, more likely to get caught when the worst arrives. And here is where the only honest response becomes compassion, because the cruelty of it is so precise. Nothing in this condition is the brain failing or breaking. It is the brain doing exactly, faithfully, what it was built across millions of years to do. Mark the danger, stay ready for it, never be caught off guard twice. Applied to a danger that has ended, and left running far too long, at a volume no one can live beside. The very gift that kept your ancestors alive, the over-remembering of the worst, becomes turned up too high and never switched off, a kind of prison, which returns us, at the end, to the man and the pill he would not take. There is a wisdom in his refusal that the science has slowly come to honor. The nightmare was agony, but it was also love and loyalty, and a grief that had been given nowhere else to go. Simply switching it off would not have healed him. It would only have silenced something that still needed saying. The deepest work of recovery, it turns out, is almost never deletion. It is helping the loop, at long last, to close, helping the body learn, slowly and for real, that the war is over and that the men who died beside him are safe now, in the only place left for them to be, held and grieved, and finally allowed to rest. Right now, as you lie here, your own alarm is doing the one thing the people in this chapter cannot make it do. It went off today, more than once, almost certainly. The email, the near miss, the word said in the wrong tone, and every time, when the moment passed, it stood down. It found the present, checked it, deemed it safe, and let go. That quiet closing, the loop completing, the all clear arriving, the body told the truth and believing it, is so ordinary that you have never once thought to thank it. Tonight it is happening again, all through you. The day's small alarms closing, one after another. The body being told, honestly, that it is safe. And if you are someone for whom it does not fully close, if some old alarm is still ringing somewhere, even now, then hear this much before you sleep. It is not weakness, and it is not your fault. It is a brave brain that once loved something or feared something too much to let it go. Rest is still yours, even so. For tonight, let the alarms that closed stay closed. Let the present be the simple thing it is, which is safe, and let the loop, wherever it can, come quietly to rest. We have called it, all this time, the fear center, the amygdala, the almond, the seat of dread, and a condition like this can seem the final proof. The fear center jammed on, flooding a life with terror it cannot switch off. But hold it up to the light, and even that begins to come apart. The amygdala's role here is murkier than the slogan. The real failure is the break, the broken loop, a whole network out of tune. And the man who first traced this circuit for us, whose roads and almond and low road we have followed since the very beginning, has spent his recent years saying something that sounds, at first, impossible. He says we got the central word wrong. He says the amygdala was never the fear center at all, and that calling it so has not only confused the science, but failed the very people we have just sat with. To follow him into that claim, we have to be willing to take apart the one idea this whole journey has been quietly resting on. The idea is so familiar by now that it barely sounds like an idea at all. It sounds like a fact, the kind you'd find in any textbook, that fear lives in the amygdala. We have spent this whole documentary, in a sense, confirming it, tracing the roads to the almond, watching what its loss did to SM, calling it again and again the seat of dread. And now, at the far end of all that, the man who drew the original map is standing in front of it, pointing and saying something that should not be possible to say. He is saying that fear was never there, that the place we have all been calling the home of fear is, of all the rooms in the brain, precisely the one where fear is not. It is one of the rarest things in science, a man taking apart with his own hands the idea that made his name. Joseph Ledoux spent the better part of 40 years building the picture we have followed since the beginning, the circuit, the low road, the almond at the heart of the fear response. The textbooks compressed all of it into a single phrase that travelled everywhere, into classrooms and self-help books and the backs of people's minds. The amygdala is the fear centre. And in his later years, Ledoux has been saying with a real and rising urgency that the phrase is wrong, that he never meant it, that it was a misreading of his own work, and that its spread has done genuine harm. His own words are blunter than any paraphrase could be. The idea that the amygdala is the home of fear, he says, is just that, an idea, not a finding, a conclusion based on an interpretation of a finding, and, he has come to believe, the wrong one. His correction rests on a distinction so simple it is easy to walk straight past, and so consequential that once you see it, the whole picture rearranges itself. There are two different things we have been calling fear, and they are not the same event. One is detection. A threat appears. The amygdala flags it. The body is flung into its response. Heart, breath, freeze, flight. All of it fast, automatic, running below the floor of awareness, exactly as we've traced from the start. The other is the feeling, the conscious, first-person experience of being afraid, the dread you could name out loud, the I am terrified you could put into a sentence. Ledoux's claim is that these two are made by different systems. That structure does only the first. It flags the threat and moves the body, but it no more produces the felt dread than a smoke detector feels frightened when it shrieks. That feeling is built somewhere else, by the slow cortical machinery that assembles your conscious experience of everything. It gathers the amygdala's signal, the state of the body, the situation, your sense of yourself inside it, and from all of it constructs the single experience, I am afraid. A detector, like the amygdala, works in the dark. The light of the feeling comes on somewhere else entirely. And it is worth being precise about what Ledoux is not saying. He is not saying the circuit is an illusion or that fear isn't real. The survival circuit is utterly real and ancient and does exactly what we have watched it do. He is saying only that the feeling, the part you would actually call being afraid, is assembled in a different place than the alarm that set it off. And you have felt the seam between these two systems yourself. Felt it, in fact, in the very first thing we ever noticed together. Go back to the flinch before the fear. The foot already on the brake, the hand already up, the body already moving, and only a beat later the flood of feeling, the heart you finally notice pounding, the dread that arrives after the fact to tell you what just happened. That gap, the one this whole long night opened with, the question of who moves first and whether it is you, was the seam all along. Detection went first, in the dark, in the almond and the body. The feeling came second, assembled in the light of awareness, a report delivered on a thing already done. You were never one event, you were always two, one part detecting and acting in the dark, another building the feeling in the light, arriving so close together your whole life that you took them for a single self, simply being afraid. Which is why the word hanging over all of this, the one in the title, the one everyone knows, turns out to be quietly, usefully wrong. Amygdala hijack. The phrase paints a vivid little scene, a calm, rational you, seated at the controls of your own mind, suddenly shoved aside as a primitive structure seizes the wheel. It is a satisfying image. It is also a fiction. Nothing in there hijacks anything, because the scene has no driver to overthrow. The amygdala doesn't wrestle control away from a conscious you who would otherwise be steering. The conscious you, the feeling self, is a different system, and it is often built only after the amygdala has already acted, sometimes for no greater purpose than to explain to you what your body has just done. There is no struggle for the wheel. There is detection, fast and old and silent, and there is feeling, slow and built and late. And they were never fighting for control, because they were never doing the same job. It would be wrong to leave you with the impression that this is settled, because it is not. Ledoux's reframing is powerful and influential, and far from universally accepted. Other serious researchers push back hard, arguing that detection and feeling are not two systems at all, but one, too deeply braided to pull apart, and that separating them is the real mistake. The evidence genuinely cuts both ways. There are cases where a body responds in full to a threat while the person reports feeling nothing, which fits Ledoux cleanly. But there is also SM, who, with her amygdala gone, lost not only the response to outside threats, but, for those same threats, the feeling of fear as well. And that is harder to square with a clean separation of the two. What almost everyone now agrees on is the part that matters most here. The amygdala is the fear center is too simple, and very probably wrong. What they are still arguing about, and it is a good argument, and an unfinished one, is what belongs in its place. And here is a paradox to carry down into sleep with you, because you are about to demonstrate the whole distinction in your own body. The feeling of fear, the conscious dread, the part Ledoux says is the only thing that deserves the name, is something only a waking mind can do. It needs the cortical light to be on, and that light is about to go out. In a few minutes, the part of you that could be afraid will quietly switch off, but the detector will not. The amygdala, the old survival circuit, will stay awake in the dark, scanning, exactly as it has on every night you have ever slept. So this is the strange thing to fall asleep on. Tonight, as every night, you will lose the ability to feel afraid long before anything stops watching for danger. Fear ends at the threshold of sleep. The detection never does. Two systems, and you are about to feel the seam between them in the dark, as one of you goes out and the other keeps its watch. The part Ledoux wants to keep, the survival circuit, the detector, is the genuinely ancient thing in all of this. The feeling may be new, a recent invention of an elaborate cortex, something close to our own. But the detection is old past reckoning, older than the feeling of fear, older than mammals, older than anything we would recognize as a mind. To understand why you carry it, and why it still fires so often, so hard, at things that were never going to hurt you, at emails and silences and the harmless shapes of an ordinary day. You have to follow it all the way back down, past yourself, past your kind, to the first creatures that ever needed to sense a danger before there was anyone home to be afraid of it. That same ancient circuit is firing in you right now, and it is firing at nothing, not at a predator, not at a cliff edge, not at anything that could lay a finger on your body. It is firing at an email you haven't answered, a message left unread, a meeting tomorrow, a thing you said last week, a silence from someone whose opinion you can't stop caring about. None of it can touch you, and yet the whole apparatus we have spent this long night tracing, the almond, the cascade, the cold hands, the high breath, is stirring exactly as it would have stirred for a shape moving at the edge of the firelight. You are not broken for this, and you are not alone in it. Every one of us is carrying a fear system calibrated for a world that has almost entirely vanished. Our detectors were tuned across a span of time too vast to feel for snakes and heights and deep water and the dark, and above all, for the one ancestral catastrophe of being cast out of the group. And they have not updated, not really. for cars or deadlines or the very modern horror of being judged. The mismatch shows most clearly in what we are afraid of. The things that frighten people most: snakes, spiders, heights, deep water, the dark, the eyes of a crowd turned toward you, make a near-perfect catalogue of the dangers that stalked our ancestors, and almost none of the things that kill us now. A snake you will very likely never meet frightens you more than the car you fold yourself into every morning, which is, by the cold numbers, among the most dangerous things you routinely do. We are built to learn the old fears in a single trial and the new ones hardly at all. And the world transformed itself in an eye blink, a few thousand years, nothing, set against the hundreds of millions that shaped the circuit, and the circuit was never told. And then, in us, something happened that has no precedent anywhere in that long line. The old detector got wired to a cortex that can imagine, a mind that runs the future, models what hasn't happened, rehearses what might. Which means our fear system, built to answer a threat standing in front of it, now answers threats that exist only in thought. The conversation that hasn't taken place, the diagnosis we don't have, the catastrophe that very probably isn't coming. We have a name for it. We call it anxiety, and it is, in a real sense, the tax we pay on the imagination, a faithful threat detector doing precisely its job on an endless stream of dangers the mind keeps feeding it, not one of them in the room. Worry is the ancient alarm, standing watch against a predator that lives only in the future tense. There is a story we tell ourselves to make sense of all this, and it is wrong, and it turns out to matter that we give it up. It is the story of the lizard brain. You have heard it, even if you've never named it. The idea that evolution built our heads in layers, like sediment, an ancient reptilian core for raw instinct and fear at the bottom, a mammalian layer for emotion laid over that, and a thin, late crust of human reason on the very top, and that to be a person is to spend your days as that top layer, struggling to keep the reptile beneath you in check. It is in the textbooks, in 1,000 self-help books, in the way people say that's just my lizard brain when they panic. And it is, in the words of one neuroscientist, one of the most successful and widespread errors in all of science. There is no lizard inside you, and there never was. While we are clearing the ground, one more myth deserves a quick burial. You may have read some years ago that anxiety lives in a single gene, the anxiety gene, the headlines called it. One variant that supposedly left some people's amygdala permanently more reactive. For a while, it was everywhere. Then larger, more careful studies went looking for it, and it simply wasn't there. The original finding dissolved, the way too many tidy genetic stories have. The inheritance is real, but it is not one switch you were handed or spared. It is the whole ancient circuit carried by every one of us, tuned a little differently in each, by more genes than anyone can name and a life too particular to predict. What the comparative anatomy actually shows is stranger than the lizard story, and, in the end, far kinder. Every backboned creature alive, you, the rat, the lizard, the fish in the dark water, inherited the same basic brain, built to the same deep plan. The reptile has its own amygdala, its own version of the memory keeper. These are not your buried reptilian parts, sitting preserved and primitive at your center. Your amygdala has been evolving in your line the entire time, just as the lizards evolved in its line. Two living variations on one ancient design, and neither one the original. You did not inherit a beast that the rest of you has to keep caged. You inherited an old and fully human part of a single, seamless brain. The fear in you is not a reptile you are fighting. It is one of the oldest, most faithful, most patient parts of yourself, and it has been on your side, and the side of everything you descend from, since long before there was a you to take a side at all. All over the world tonight, in their countless versions, these old detectors are keeping watch. In every sleeping person and in every sleeping animal, the deer folded in the long grass, the mouse in the wall, the bird that sleeps with one half of its brain awake. The same ancient circuit stays lit in the dark while everything else goes quiet. It may be one of the oldest unbroken things on this planet, not any single creature's watchfulness, but the watchfulness itself, passed hand to hand without a single gap across hundreds of millions of years, from the first wary thing in the shallows all the way down to you, lying here now. You are one quiet link in that line tonight. And the watch is keeping itself for you, exactly as it kept itself for every creature you have ever descended from, all the way back to the dark and the water. There is one thing this watch never learned to do across all that time, and it is the thing that matters most for the hours just ahead of you. It never learned to rest when its creature rested. It couldn't, because the animal whose alarm switched off when it fell asleep was, more often than not, the animal that something found in the dark and did not leave. So the watch had to continue straight through sleep, every night, in every ancestor, in an unbroken chain that ends, tonight, in you. Which leaves the question this whole long descent has been quietly moving toward. If the detector truly never sleeps, if fear keeps its watch through the very state you are sinking into right now, then what exactly is it doing in there, in the dark, awake, while you are not? You are about to do the strangest, most trusting thing a living creature can do. In a few minutes, or perhaps a few more, you will let go of consciousness entirely. Switch off the part of you that watches and decides, and lie still and soft and undefended in the dark, for hours, with no idea what is happening around you. And you will hand the keeping of your life, while you do it, to the one system you cannot switch off, cannot reason with, cannot even fully trust. The same alarm that floods you with dread over an unanswered message. The same machinery that has frightened you, on and off, all day. By night, the thing that torments you becomes your only watchman. And you have no say in the arrangement. You could not relieve it of duty if you tried. Because here is the first surprising thing about that watchman. It does not clock off when you do. Far from it. When you slide down into dreaming sleep, into REM, the stage where the vivid dreams live. The thinking, reasoning, regulating part of your brain goes quiet, very nearly dark. The amygdala does the opposite. In that stage, by several different measures, it is among the most active regions in the entire brain. The watch doesn't merely stay awake while you sleep. In the deepest theatre of the night, it grows louder just as the one part of you that might talk it down goes offline. The brain you dream with is, in a real sense, an emotional brain with the brakes off, which is a good part of why dreams are the way they are, why they tilt so readily toward the chase, the fall, the locked door, the thing in the hall. The fear system is wide awake and running, and the prefrontal voice that would lean over and say none of this is real has gone home for the night. You can measure exactly what that calming voice is worth by taking it away. Keep someone awake through a single night, then show them something distressing, and the amygdala fires far harder than it would in a rested brain. In one landmark study, around 60% harder, while its line to the prefrontal brake comes loose and frays. That is the science underneath a thing you already know in your bones. That the world is more frightening, more raw, more impossible to bear at 4 a.m. after a sleepless night than it will ever be at noon after a good one. The fears are not bigger, the brake is just weaker. Sleep, it turns out, is not a luxury the fear system can take or leave. Sleep is the nightly maintenance that keeps the alarm from going off at everything. The watch even has a dial and you can catch it turning. On your first night somewhere unfamiliar, a hotel, a new flat, a friend's spare room, you sleep badly, and it isn't only nerves. Researchers discovered that on that first night, the brain sleeps lopsided. One half of it, the left, stays in a thinner, shallower sleep than the other, standing a kind of sentry, startling awake faster at an unexpected sound. It is the same trick the dolphin uses, and the duck asleep on the edge of the flock, half the brain down, half the brain on guard, a watchfulness so old it predates dreaming itself. And then, by the second night, once the place has been learned and judged safe, the watch eases off, the dial turns down, and both halves of the brain finally sink together into the deep, which is worth holding on to exactly now as you lie here. If you are in your own bed tonight, in a room your brain decided long ago was safe, then the watch is already at its lowest, gentlest setting. It is not standing sentry tonight. It knows this place and stood down long ago. There is nothing here it has to guard you from, and so there is nothing keeping you from going all the way down. Sometimes, of course, the watch in the dark does fire. A nightmare is the fear system running its whole program inside a dream, the dread, the chase, the falling, vivid enough to wake you, and frightening precisely because it is the dream you remember. But there is a stranger and quieter version, and it belongs mostly to the very young, the night terror, which rises not out of dreaming at all, but out of the deepest, dreamless trench of the night. A small child sits bolt upright, screaming, heart hammering, drenched in pure terror, and in the morning remembers nothing of it, because there was no dream to remember, no story, no images. There was only the alarm itself, firing alone in the deep dark, with no one home to feel it. It is, in a way, the purest example of everything we have followed tonight. Detection without feeling. The body's full terror running in an empty house, the watchman sounding for a danger that no one, not even the child it belongs to, will ever be able to name. But the night is not only watching and not only firing. There is a gentler possibility folded into all of this, one of the loveliest ideas in the whole science, and, in honesty, it is still being argued over. The thought runs like this. In dreaming sleep, when your emotional memories are pulled up and replayed, the brain's own stress chemistry has gone quiet. The chemical that floods you with alarm by day falls almost silent in REM. So the dreaming brain may be able to take the day's frights, and even some of the older wounds, into a kind of safe room where the alarm chemistry is switched off, and handle them there, turning them over, loosening them, filing them back by morning with a little less charge than they carried in the light. Some have called it overnight therapy. Whether it truly works as cleanly as that, the evidence is still fighting about. But something, undeniably, is happening in there every night that takes the day and returns it to you changed, so you can let it happen. Inside you, the lights are going out now. The planning rooms, the reasoning rooms, the worrying rooms, each clicking dark in turn, the way a house quiets at the end of a long day. One lamp stays lit at the top of the stairs. It has stayed lit every night you have ever slept, and every night of every creature you came down from, and it will stay lit tonight. You do not have to tend it. You could not put it out if you wished to. The only thing being asked of you now is the one thing the watchman itself can never do, to let go and go dark and trust the light at the top of the stairs to keep. And so you arrive, as you do every night, at the threshold, the one you have crossed countless thousands of times and never once watched yourself cross. You are about to perform the most ordinary miracle there is, to hand over your entire self to the dark, let the feeling self flicker out, and trust the oldest part of you to carry the rest of you safely through to morning. Everything this long night has been about gathers, quietly, right here at this edge. The gap, the almond, the two roads, the two systems, the small dark organ that has built every fear you have ever had. There is just one last thing to understand before you go under, the strangest thing of all, and the thing the whole journey has been moving toward. What it actually means to be this, a creature alone in the dark, producing its own fear and its own light and its own self, and calling all of it home. Go back, one last time, to where all of this began, to the break your foot found before you knew there was anything to break for, the glass caught before you saw it slip, the flinch at the coil in the grass that turned out to be a hose. All night, We have been circling that one small gap, the sliver of a second between the body acting and you finding out it had acted. And now, at the very end, we can finally say what was happening inside it. The gap was never empty. It was full. Two different things were going on in there, in two different parts of you, at the very same moment. Something fast and old and silent was sensing the danger and throwing your body clear. And something slower, the conscious self, the one that says I, was being assembled, half a beat behind, only to arrive at a scene already handled, and to call what it found there fear. That was the question we opened with, and we have answered it. The thing that moves first detects. The self that arrives second feels, and the gap between them is the seam. But in answering it, we have walked straight into a far larger question, the one this whole long night has truly been about, the one saved for the very end. We can say now where the detecting happens. We have followed it everywhere. The roads, the almond, the cascade, every wire and every chemical, in a rat and a human and a fish in the dark. The detecting is public. It can be measured, mapped, watched on a screen, found and pointed to. The feeling cannot. The dread itself, the lived, first-person experience of being afraid, has never been located by any instrument ever built. A scientist could know everything there is to know about the fear in your brain from the outside, every neuron and every chemical, the whole pattern complete, and still not know the one thing that matters most, what it is actually like for you to be afraid. That knowledge lives only on the inside, and you could be drowning in terror, utterly sure of it, and not be able to hand a single grain of the real feeling to the person lying beside you. The mechanism faces outward toward everyone. The feeling faces inward toward no one but you, and no one, anywhere, knows how the first becomes the second. No case ever posed this more sharply than the woman who could not be frightened. When the disease dissolved her amygdala, it dissolved her fear of the world, the snakes, the dark, the threats from outside. The detector was gone, and the dread it would have raised never arrived. And yet one breath of the wrong air reached in and handed her the worst fear of her life by a route that never went near the missing almond at all. Her body could be made afraid without the very part we had crowned the seat of fear, which can only mean that the feeling was never living where we kept looking for it. It is built somewhere else, somewhere we still cannot point to out of more sources than we can count. And what it is, and where it is, and how a wet handful of cells in the dark turns its own faint activity into the felt, unbearable fact of being afraid is as much a mystery tonight as it was the first time any human being ever stopped to wonder about it. Let's be honest about how deep this runs here at the end. This is not a gap that more data will close. We could map every neuron in your head and time every signal to the millionth of a second, and we would still be standing before the same impossible hinge. How a physical event, current crossing tissue in the dark, becomes an experience, a feeling, something it is like to undergo. The detecting, we explain a little better every year. The feeling, we cannot explain even slightly. Some believe we will, in time, that this is merely a very hard problem, not an impossible one, and that a future science will close it the way it closed the gaps that once seemed unbridgeable. Some believe the question is badly formed, that asking how the matter makes the feeling is a little like asking what lies north of the North Pole, a sensible-sounding question with no answer, because the words don't fit the world. And some believe it lies permanently past us, that a brain may simply not be the kind of thing that can ever turn all the way around and explain its own inside from the outside, any more than an eye can see itself seeing. There is no pretending to know which of them is right. Tonight, the only honest answer is that no one does. The gap is real, and it may be the most interesting thing in all of human knowledge. And you are not standing outside this question, studying it from a safe distance. You are standing in the dead center of it, because all night, while you have been listening, following the roads, meeting the woman, watching the old certainty come apart. The thing producing your understanding and your attention, and every flicker of fear or wonder you have felt along the way, has been the very organ under the lamp. The dread you would feel if something frightened you this instant and the circuit that would make it are not two things you could ever lay side by side and compare. They are one event lived from within and traced from without in the same breath in you. There has been a quiet question beneath all of this from the very first words, one never spoken aloud. If this is truly how the brain works, the roads, the almond, the two systems, the dark, then what is it like to be one? And the answer has been here the whole time, because you are one, having the experience even now, as we describe the machinery of having it. You have been the listener, and the thing listened about, and the place where the listening happens, all at once. There is no distance between you and the subject. You are the subject, listening to itself in the dark, on its way to sleep. Let it all settle now, one last time before you go. Everything we followed tonight was, in the end, a single thing, turned over and over to catch the light from different sides. There was the 12 milliseconds, and the body deciding before you could, the fork in the dark, the quick rumour and the slow truth, the almond and the monkey that lost its fear, and the woman who held the snake, until one breath of air, against everything we thought we knew, frightened her after all. There was the fear written into a single synapse, the fear that can be quieted but never erased, the alarm that, in some brave and wounded people, will not stand down. And there was the inheritance older than mammals, and the watch that never ever sleeps. Every wire, every number, every name, all of it was one thing, doing the one thing it does, building out of salt and electricity and the dark, the felt life of a creature that can be harmed and knows it and would rather not be. That is what a fear is. That is what you are made of. And it has been running faithfully beneath every second of this long night, keeping you safe enough to lie here and wonder about it. And the strangest fact of all is the one we opened with, have circled all night and can finally say straight. It is inside your skull at this very moment, about 3 pounds of tissue folded into total darkness that has never once seen light and never will. There are no eyes within it. Nothing of the enormous world it builds can ever reach back in and touch it. And it has never itself been afraid. There is no fear anywhere inside it, no dread in the cells, only current and salt water and the dark. Yet out of that blind, wet, silent, unfrightened thing comes every fear you have ever felt, and every light you have ever seen, and the whole of the self that feels them. The mechanism is the most public thing there is, built of the same plain matter as the stars and the sea. What it makes, the experience, the dread, the felt fact of being you, is the most private thing in the universe. Yours alone, impossible to hand to another, impossible so far to explain. They are not two things. They are one event, seen from its two impossible sides. And you, the one lying here in the dark, going under, you are the seeing, you are the dark, producing the light. You always were, so let it. You have understood tonight as much as anyone living understands. The thread can be set down now. The part of you that has followed all of this, the feeler, the knower, the one who stayed awake, is the very part that is finally allowed to go, and it is safe to go. Below everything, the detector stays. It always stays. It will keep its watch in the dark the way it has kept watch for every creature you came from, and it asks nothing of you now, nothing at all, but to stop holding on. There is a quiet mercy in what comes next. The one thing in you that could be afraid, the feeling self assembled in the light, is the very thing now flickering out. In a few minutes, there will be no one home to be afraid. Not gone, only resting. The dark organ will go on without you, building nothing, fearing nothing, keeping you. And you will never catch the moment you cross, because the part of you that would catch it is the part that is leaving. That is what the dark does. By day, it frightens you. By night, it keeps you. The same dark, the one folded in your skull, the one filling this room, the one closing softly over you now, has held you safe through every night you have ever lived. It is holding you now. You don't have to help it. You don't have to do anything at all. Your breathing has already slowed. Your shoulders have already let go. There is nothing here to break for, nothing to run from, nothing left in the dark that the watch has not already met and weighed and let pass. So let go. The light is going out now, gently, the way it always knew how. The watch is set, the dark is keeping you. You made all of it, the fear, the light, the dark itself, and tonight you can lay it down, let it take over, and rest. You are safe, and you always were, more than you ever knew. Let it keep you. Rest now.